Let's start with a simple observation about the modern world. We are living in an era where simplicity is suspected. If you have a headache and go to a doctor, and the doctor says, go home, drink water, and sleep, you will feel cheated. You will think he is a quack. You want him to order an MRI, to do blood tests, to prescribe a long prescription with unpronounceable Latin names. You want a complex procedure. Why? Because deep down, you believe that a problem must be solved by an equally complex solution. If you want to get rich and someone hands you a 500-page book full of charts and economic algorithms, you will nod. This is the real secret. But if someone says, spend less than you earn, you will pout. Everyone knows that. We have a deep-seated belief that what is complex is valuable. What is simple is trivial. The ego, the false self that we build, is an addict of complexity. It is like a weaver who never stops working, constantly weaving nets of thoughts, anxieties, and tangled analysis. Look at your life right now. How many apps do you have on your phone to manage life? How many plans, how many goals, how many worries about the future do you have? How much time do you spend analyzing a message from someone else? He put a period at the end of the sentence. What does that mean? Is he angry? We turn life, which is inherently a natural flow like breathing, into an advanced calculus problem that we have to solve every day. We pull our hair out, we stress, we lose sleep, and strangely, we are proud of that stress. We consider the busyness and complexity of our lives as a badge of honor. But stop for a moment. Look out the window. Look at the tree. Does the tree need a 5-year strategic plan to grow? Does it need a briefing meeting every morning to decide which branch grows in which direction? Does it get depressed, fearing that next spring it won't be green enough? No. It simply grows. It absorbs water, it catches sunlight, and it spreads its leaves. A biological operation of immense complexity, yet utterly simple in its existence. Your soul, or your original face, the true nature inside you, is just like that tree. It loves simplicity. It knows how to live without a user manual. But your ego, like a bureaucratic manager, always stands there shouting, directing, and messing everything up. Today we will go into the very lair of the ego to see why it loves complexity so much and how you can reclaim the sacred simplicity of the soul. To understand why the ego loves complexity, we must understand what the ego is. In the view of Alan Watts, the ego is not a biological entity. You cannot cut open the brain and find a piece of meat called ego. The ego is an idea. It is a mental image that you create about yourself. It is like looking in a mirror, seeing the reflection, and believing that the image in the mirror is you. But no, you are the one standing in front of the mirror. The ego is an assumption. Because it is fake, it is very fragile. It is always afraid of dissolving. It is always afraid of being discovered that it is not real. And what is the best way for something unreal to feel real? It is to create conflict and trouble. Imagine a bureaucrat in an administrative machine. If society is peaceful and people behave well on their own, then the role of that bureaucrat becomes redundant. He will be fired. Therefore, to keep his seat, he must create cumbersome procedures. He must spawn paperwork, stamps, processes. He makes things so complex that citizens cannot do it themselves, but are forced to depend on him. The ego is that bureaucrat in your mind. If life is simple, eat when hungry, sleep when tired, cry when sad, laugh when happy, then what work does the ego have to do? It would be unemployed. Therefore, the ego must complicate everything. Instead of just eating when hungry, the ego creates complex diets, calorie counting, worries about gluten, about GMOs, about the ethics of eating meat. It turns a meal into a moral and mathematical problem. Instead of just loving someone, the ego analyzes, is this person compatible astrologically? Is this a twin flame? Does this relationship have a future? It turns love into a strategic chess game. The main operating mechanism of the ego is measurement and fragmentation. In Indian philosophy, the illusory world is called Maya. The word Maya shares the same root as the word metra, to measure. The ego cannot experience the world as a unified whole. It must cut the world into small pieces to control it. It cuts time into past, present, future. It cuts people into good, bad, self, other. It cuts life into success, failure. The more it cuts, the more fragmentary and complex the world becomes. Like holding a beautiful crystal vase and smashing it into 1,000 pieces. Now you have thousands of sharp fragments that need to be handled, sorted, glued back together. The ego loves that pile of fragments. It says, look how busy I am. I am trying to glue life back together. Look how important I am. But the soul looks at the pile of fragments and smiles, shaking its head. The soul knows that the vase never needed to be broken in the first place. The soul loves wholeness, and wholeness is always simple. The most effective tool the ego uses to create complexity is language and linear thinking. Alan Watts often said, we confuse the menu with the meal. We confuse the map with the territory. Reality, or what is incredibly alive, multidimensional, and fluid. You cannot capture a stream with a bucket, because once the water is in the bucket, it is no longer a flowing stream. It is stagnant water. But the ego wants to capture the stream. It wants to frame life, so it uses words. It labels everything. You look at a flower, your soul simply sees the flower, a direct, vibrant, and complete experience. No words needed. But the ego jumps in. This is a rose. It is red. It belongs to the Rosaceae family. It symbolizes love. It is beautiful, but it has thorns. I should take a picture for Instagram. What caption should I write? Boom! In a split second, the simple experience of the flower disappears. Instead, there is a mess of concepts, biological knowledge, cultural symbols, and social pressure. You no longer see the flower. You are seeing your thoughts about the flower. This is the tragedy of modern humans. We live in a world of symbols instead of the real world. We live in our heads, and the head, the mind, is a maze with no exit. Why? Because thinking has the characteristic of self-reflexivity. You think about something, then you think about the fact that you are thinking about that thing. For example, you feel sad, the ego jumps in. Why am I sad? Sadness is not good. I must be happy. But I cannot be happy. I am so incompetent. Why am I so incompetent? Maybe I am depressed. I should see a doctor. From a simple sadness, like a cloud passing by, the ego has turned it into a storm of analysis. This is what Alan Watts calls worrying about worrying. The ego believes that if it thinks enough, it will solve the problem, but thinking is the cause, creating the problem. It is like being in a room full of smoke. You try to use your hands to wave the smoke away, but your waving action only agitates the air more and spreads the smoke everywhere. The soul loves simplicity. Just open the window and the smoke will drift away on its own. The ego loves complexity. It wants to build a nuclear-powered smoke extractor with a 500-button control panel. There is a deep social reason why the ego loves complexity. Complexity brings a sense of power and status. In our society, an important person is a busy person. A smart person is someone who says difficult to understand things. Look at academia, law, or religion. They use a very complex, exclusive language. Why? To create barriers so that ordinary people cannot understand, so that they become the priest class holding the truth. If a philosopher writes a book that anyone can understand immediately, life is just for living, be happy, he will be looked down upon. Colleagues will call him superficial. But if he writes, the ontological existentialism of the being in the context of post-structuralist metaphysics is an agnostic category, everyone will gasp. So profound, he must be a genius. The spiritual ego also falls into this trap. It dislikes simple methods like just observe the breath. It dismisses that as elementary. It wants complex methods, must visualize 7 chakras, must chant Sanskrit mantras, must perform rituals at exactly 3 a.m., must eat a macrobiotic diet, must decode past lives. The ego likes difficulty. Why? Because what is hard to achieve gives the self a chance to be proud when achieving it. If enlightenment is simple, like putting a glass down on the table, then anyone can do it. And if anyone can do it, then what is special about me? No. Enlightenment must be extremely hard. Must sit in meditation with painful legs for 20 years. Must climb the Himalayas. Must endure asceticism. So that when I achieve it, I can stand on a high podium and look down at the crowd. You cannot do it. Only I can do it. The ego turns spirituality into a high-performance sport. It is addicted to complexity, because complexity is fuel for arrogance. The soul is the opposite. The soul does not care about status. The soul needs no applause. The soul is like water. Water always finds the lowest place to flow to, the place humans despise. But precisely in that lowest place, water becomes the vast ocean. Taoism calls that the usefulness of uselessness. Great simplicity lies in not trying to become something special. So, what is the simplicity that the soul loves really? It is not minimalism in the sense of throwing away all furniture and living in a stark white room. That is just an aesthetic style. And sometimes that style is also very expensive and complex to maintain. The simplicity of the soul is a state of consciousness. Alan Watts calls it Wu-wei, or effortless action. Observe your body. Right now, your heart is beating, your lungs are breathing, your stomach is digesting, billions of cells are metabolizing. A terribly complex biological process. If you gave your ego control over it, you would die immediately. You wouldn't know which heart valve to open first, which enzyme to secrete next. But the soul, the natural intelligence of the body, does all those things fluidly, without thinking, without effort. Simplicity is letting nature operate through you. The ego loves complexity because it believes it must control everything. It is like a boatman trying to use oars to row against the river. He is tired, stressed, calculating every stroke. The soul loves simplicity because it knows how to let go and let the river carry it. It still steers the boat, but it uses the power of the water, not its own muscle power. Simplicity is when you are hungry, you eat. You don't eat concepts of nutrition, you eat food. Simplicity is when you work, you work. You don't work while worrying about the result or comparing yourself to colleagues. Action and actor merge into one. In Zen, there is a story about the centipede. The centipede has 100 legs, and it walks very gracefully. One day, a toad asked it, "Hey, mister, Centipede, how do you know which leg to move first, which leg to move next? How do you manage 100 legs so well? The centipede started thinking, yeah, how do I do it? It started analyzing. It started trying to control each leg with consciousness. And what was the result? It tripped and could not walk anymore. The ego is the toad, paralyzing the centipede with complex questions. The soul is the natural walking ability of the centipede before it started thinking, how do we escape the complex maze of the ego and return to the simplicity of the soul? Lao Tzu calls this process returning to the uncarved block. When we are born, we are an uncarved block of wood, simple, infinitely potential, without fixed shape. Society, education, and the ego start carving that block. We become vases, statues, complex tools full of functions and prejudices. Returning to simplicity is not learning something new. It is a process of unlearning the need to understand everything. The ego wants to understand the universe with logic, but the universe is larger than logic. Accept the mystery. Accept that there are things you don't need to label, don't need to explain. Just feel it. Instead of analyzing the sound of falling rain, sound frequency, water volume, just hear the rain. Let that sound pass through you. That is simplicity, unlearning the need to become special. Accept being an ordinary person. Alan Watts says, enlightenment is the feeling that there is nothing special. When you no longer try to prove you are smart, holy, successful, the 1,000-pound burden on your shoulders falls off. Life becomes weightless. You can enjoy washing dishes, sweeping the floor, drinking tea. Because you no longer consider those things trivial, you see the magic in the ordinary. Practice the gap. The ego fears empty space. It fills time with thoughts, with phones, with music, with work. For the soul to speak, you need to create gaps. Try sitting still for 5 minutes, doing nothing. Not meditating in the sense of trying to concentrate. Just sit, like a cat sitting in the sun. At first, the ego will scream. It will throw dozens of anxious thoughts at you. Do not fight. Watch them like clouds passing by. Do not invite them for tea. Gradually, the clouds will dissolve, and the blue sky of simplicity will appear. Finally, we do not need to destroy the ego or deny complexity completely. Complexity has its beauty. A Beethoven symphony is very complex and beautiful. A computer processor is very complex and useful. The problem lies not in complexity, but in the fact that we are lost in it. We forget the foundation. Imagine life as a piece of music. The ego likes the trills, the complicated chords. But the soul is the silence between those notes. Without silence, simplicity, music is just chaotic noise. The soul is the white background of the paper for the ego to paint brilliant pictures on. If you paint the paper completely full, leaving no white space, the picture becomes a pile of black ink. Simplicity is the root, complexity is the branches and leaves. We modern people are living hanging upside down from the branches, clinging to leaves, shaking in the storm, forgetting the solid roots planted deep in the earth. Today, give your soul a gift. Turn off one notification. Drop one meaningless social appointment. Stop analyzing an action of someone. Take a breath, and just know that you are breathing. In that moment, the moment of pure simplicity, you will realize a truth that Alan Watts spent his whole life conveying. You do not need to do anything to become happy or enlightened. You are inherently complete already. The universe did not make a mistake when creating you. Complexity is the game of hide and seek you are playing, but simplicity is the home you can always return to. And that home, miraculously, is always right here, right now, in this breath. Welcome home.